The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is presented by Vans. Season 8 of FNRad is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, Anon Optics, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Find an Epic Agent Worldwide Real Estate, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. Anon Optics make the best snowboarding goggles in my opinion. My new Anon M4S goggles fit my face perfectly, and the magnetic lens system allows me to transition seamlessly and adapt to variable light conditions like from sunny to cloudy or nighttime on the fly. If I need a face mask, again through the magic of magnets, it takes only a few seconds and I'm good to go. Anon's perceived lens technology enhances contrast for bright light days. I absolutely love it. Go to an Anon dealer near you to try out some frames and lens tints to see what works best for you. Anon Optics goggles are seriously the best. Support also comes from Dakine, Mount Seymour, Grouse Mountain, Pro Standard GoPro accessories, and Volcom Outerwear. Hey, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and follow us wherever you listen to the show, and maybe leave a 5-star review. That'd be nice. Special thanks this episode to Beneath Apparel, This Place's Awesome Vacation Rentals in Whistler, High Cascade Snowboard Camp, Wy'East Mountain Academy, and Tomahawk Indigenous Products. Bobby Meeks had a handful of classic pro models on Joyride and Subtle snowboards. He filmed with Standard Films before helping start the robotfood movie crew. Eventually moving to the team manager side of snowboarding, Bobby managed big-name pro snowboarders on Nike and DC, and now he runs We Are Camp, which includes High Cascade Snowboard Camp, Wy'East Academy, and Windell's at Mount Hood in Oregon. We were super stoked to stay up at Mount Hood for a couple of days this summer during the Vans Signature Series High Cascade session, which is where we caught up with Bobby Meeks.
First snowboard I ever saw was I was at Mountain High, California, in 1990. It was either 89 or 90, but that was the first snowboard I ever saw. Friends of mine took me skiing one day, and they were like some older friends that I used to work some construction for when I wasn't at school or on the weekends. They took me up snowboarding or skiing for the first time, and I'd never even seen snowboarding. I'd never been skiing. I had really never even been to the mountains I lived in Southern California, but I just didn't get up to Wrightwood or anything like that, to an actual ski resort. And I saw snowboarding for the first time. I was skiing the whole time, and I'm like, what is that? That's what I want to do. It's like whatever that is down there. And they're like, oh yeah, that's snowboarding. And I was like, wow, dude, I want to do that. So the very next day I went to skate this ramp in one of my friend's house or whatever. And I was just bragging about how I went skiing and like how I saw snowboarding and how I'd love to do that, whatever. And one of my buddies from high school was like, dude, I have a snowboard. I'll sell it to you for $80. And I was like, $80. And at the time it was like, that's a lot of money. And so I called up my friends who I worked for or whatever. And I was like, dude, can I borrow $80? Please, I'll work it off. Please just come to the ramp and let me buy this snowboard. So I ended up, bought it for $80. It was a black snow mogul monster.
You got ripped off, man.
Yeah,
those things are like 50 retail.
Dude, it had no edges. It was like, no, it was great. I would have paid, looking back, I'd have paid, it was worth every penny.
I got you, man.
Worth $1 million.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I love it. I love it so much. Yeah, sorry that I had the Legend, which was the Legend SE. No, I had the Edge. I had the one with the edge on it.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing the Edge.
They were super heavy. I didn't ever learn how to turn on it. I got a pro board before. I got an avalanche.
The funny thing is I knew nothing about it, and I remember going up one day. I didn't even take the lift. I just went up to Mountain High and I only hiked. I just walked up there and hiked, and then I was going down. I'm like, it's kind of sticky. And a buddy of mine the next day is like, hey man, you have to wax that thing. Yeah. And I was like, I gotta wax it. He's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So the next time I get some wax, some candle wax, and I just lit it and dripped candle wax all over it. Didn't scrape it or nothing. Just had, just a whole candle. I dripped on it. I was like, all right, now I'm going to haul ass. And Nope, it had the opposite effect. And was not very fast.
So you rode that thing a few times.
I rode it for about all the rest of the season, I think, and then I ended up meeting some other like-minded, snowboarders or whatever. I technically wasn't a snowboarder at that time, but some people who snowboarded from my high school, and we ended up connecting. And one of the guys had like an old GNU,
sick,
and I ended up buying that off of him, and that was kind of like my upgrade. And then I joined the high school ski team or whatever ski club.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't think there's not many people that joined.
Well, at the time it was like I didn't have a car, and
Right.
it was my only outlet really to actually go up, because I was just obsessed. So I basically all I could do is whatever I could do to get on the mountain.
Yeah.
So the snow ski team was awesome because they did all these trips, which is funny because then it led into I went on the company was called LA Ski and Sun Tours, and the owner of it, awesome dude, like this guy Phil, like just super tall, blonde, long hair, lived at the beach, probably Malibu, I think, or something like that.
Nice.
Owned a Porsche and just was like this really cool dude. I don't know where he is in life now, but anyway, so I started going on these trips, and then he's like, dude, you rip on that thing. Like, we want to sponsor you. And I was like, well, what? I don't even know what that means. Like, sponsor me. What does that mean?
Rad.
And he's like, well, we'll give you discounts, like you can go on these trips, but we'll charge you like half the price. And I was like, all right, that's great, because I'm working my ass off to go on one trip for full price. And I ended up doing that, and went on a bunch of trips, and it was kind of cool. I had 3 people riding for him. One kid was Darius. I forget his last name. Darius Jones, I think his last name. Anyway, but he was from a different school. And then there's this kid, Brian Aguchi, that I met on that trip. And he was a year older than us. And so we would go and I would do trips, and it would be Brian and myself and this kid Darius, and we would cruise around. And then I actually even met this guy Eddie Lee on one of those trips too.
32 Eddie Lee.
32, been in the industry for a long time, and
He was a pro rider at one point, right? Well,
up
right
in Big
now
Bear,
this is his start to it. Was this team, obviously?
Yeah, it was cool. It was just a good time. You just did whatever you could do to go snowboard, and there's no way I would have had the ability to the resources to go and travel like that and go, to Squaw or Colorado and all these areas that we went to.
How many years before Aguchi on Avalanche is that? Because the Avalanche,
he was on Checkered Pig.
Oh wow, so that's 91.
Yeah,
that's. I was just talking to Tim about the years there for.
Yeah, I graduated in 91, and that was like I basically got one and kind of a 1.5 seasons in.
That's amazing. Holy shit, dude! What board are you riding at this point?
See, it was kind of weird. I went to. I ended up getting. It's funny. I ended up with an Avalanche. Some way. I forget how I got it, but
like the A's on either it
was it wasn't the kick. It was because at the time I was a huge Damian Sanders fan.
Yeah,
at
me
one
too.
point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the kick was amazing, but I wasn't that. It was a twin tip. It was like it was pretty short.
Yep.
And I think I got it I know I did it because I had bought an Avalanche from a friend that was a old beat up one and de-lambed, I think, and I sent it back and they sent me a brand new one.
Are you serious?
And yeah, so
Rad.
I had this brand new one, and then eventually I went to Big Bear one day to just snowboard with my family. Like it was the first time they'd ever been up there, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go ride, And one of these guys that I knew from the thing was like, hey, they're doing a contest up at Bear. And I was like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, you should enter. It's like $5. And I'm like, well, I don't know. And then so I asked my aunt, I'm like, can you guys loan me $5, to get in this contest? And so they gave me $5. I entered the contest or whatever. But I ended up, long story short, I ended up winning the event.
Of course.
And it was pretty funny. I don't know. It was just I don't know. I think I butt checked a whole bunch too, and I still ended up with a win on it. But and then I ended up winning a snowboard. I won a Look Lamar snowboard from that.
Which is kind of a step back from the twin tip Avalanche.
Yeah, and I was brand new though, so I was just like, hey, all right. But yeah, that was that went from there. And then shortly after that, I was cruising around, and I got sponsored by some dude, Bill Keller. Just came up to me, BK from Legend in Southern California. Called out to him.
I know BK. He's awesome.
He came out to me and he literally followed me around to run, and I was like, "What? Somebody's trailing me or something, whatever." And then we got down to the bottom, and he was just like, "Who? What's your name? Who are you?" I was like, "Bobby, whatever." And he's like, "Dude, you want to ride for our shop, H2O?" And so And I was like, at the time, you're like, what does it mean? I don't know. Whatever.
Right,
sure.
right.
Yeah, sounds good. Like, do I get stuff? Do I get stickers?
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna give me free stickers? Awesome. So, but it was H2O Surf and Snow, and I met this guy Vype down there, and yeah, I mean, I started riding for them, and then I think that my second sponsor, or I don't remember. Well, I guess it's my third if I count that LIC Sun Tours. But third one was I started riding for Barfoot from
Amazing.
the rep rider.
Amazing.
As a rep rider, local rep rider.
That's killer.
Yeah, and then it was funny because they gave me a board. The product wasn't flowing like it is today. It's
No. Especially not from Barfoot.
No.
Devin asked for a second board. Who would it have been? Boyer. Boyer's like, you need to hook this guy up.
Yeah.
And Chuck was like, aren't you the guy? Like, your name's on the board. Why do I have to give another one to this young kid?
Dude, I used to have to call Chuck. I would bug the hell out of Chuck Barfoot to be like, my board is delamined. I've got like 8 rivets in it or whatever. And I'm like, dude, T-nuts. I'm like, I need a new snowboard. Like, please, and like, whatever. And then he ended up, and again, they didn't give me another board or whatever. And then from Barfoot, I went to 5150.
Oh,
and yeah, so I was one of their first riders on 5150. And then, so it was like crazy because they were like, a board production brand. It had
their boards were really, really good.
Yeah, it was weird ones. We had like the really rough texture, and it had sea monkeys on it. Like all those weird sea monkeys.
Totally remember that board.
Yeah, so that was like, I remember at the time too, and I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in riding for you guys. And the guy's selling me on it. He's in the factory of their like shop in Southern California, and he's like, well, we'll pay you $500 a month because we want you to make sure that you've got money for rent. And I was just like, you're gonna pay me $500 a month to ride your board? Awesome. And then so I rode for them for about a half a season, and then that's where BK comes in because BK was repping him at the time, and he ended up leaving, going to Joyride. And long story short on that one is he like, do you want to go to ride for Joyride as well? And
Sick.
I was like, dude, I'm in. I'm like,
what
at the
era?
time, that was
Joyride.
1992, I think, or 93.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's a perfect time. What, like flower pot boards?
Yeah. Yeah. And so 93, and then I rode for Joyride for about, like, the craziest thing with Joyride is like I got on their team, and like at the time, I mean, I don't know, I guess I was considered a pro snowboarder, but it wasn't. It wasn't like, I don't know, it's not like it was today. It was just more like, oh yeah, rip around on this thing. I get paid. Like, this is awesome. But it's following. Joyride was so close to like the skateboard companies. They modeled themselves off of the skate scene in a way,
right.
and the culture of skateboarding. So all of their pros they all had pro models.
Yep.
And so I instantly got on Joyride, and they were like, okay, cool. So let's talk about your pro model design. And I was just like, what? What? My pro model design? You mean I get a pro model?
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that was just like, it was awesome working with those guys, like Ken Greengard and a bunch of
Ken's awesome.
The family, and then so ultimately, like, I rode for them for a couple years, and then ended up leaving them. Went to Subtle for James.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, and went from Subtle, rode for Subtle for about 2 years. Same thing there, like kind of had a couple pro models on there. And then Subtle ended up going out. They were a little too subtle, and they went out of business shortly after.
Yep.
And then I got on K2.
Sick.
And there's lots of long stories behind that, each one of those, but I don't know how much time we have or whatever. But
yeah, man, this is fascinating to me because that's my era. I was working at a shop. We were the Canadian distributor for Joyride. So like even that 5150 connection, Joyride made a board at 5150, the Fuego.
Yeah, the Fuego.
With the bear on it. Mm-hmm. And that was a standout board from Joyride at that time. It's like everyone wanted that.
Yeah.
You wanted the dullard for the graphic, but you would break it in a couple of days.
Yeah, I came in on the Joyride right after Roan and Dale left.
Sick.
They all left, and then I basically was left was Jason Carragher, Hillary Mayberry, myself. Sick. And then, let's see, who else is on there? The time.
A little bit later on, Dave Craig would be on there, but you would have probably been
Dave
gone
Craig.
by then.
Yeah. And then Jason Murphy rode for him for a hot minute, I think. And
sick.
then Gabe Crane.
Oh wow! Yeah,
I don't know. It was a good crew.
they positioned themselves really well
Yeah.
a couple years in a row, but I think there was like production issues or something.
Well, they were always trying to reinvent. Like I remember Ken would be like, "What do you think of these bindings?" You know, and it was like baseless bindings or
Right,
something.
right,
You know, everyone
right.
had that little stint where they were doing baseless bindings.
Yeah.
But there was always just something like it was some kind of thing. And it was funny because like he would sit. And I'd be like, "Hey, this is what I want. I want this board right here. I want this shape. I want to do this. I want to do that." And he would just sit there at the magazine and kind of listen and like, well, you know, Jason Gaines or whatever he was over there, and they'd be like, "Okay, all right," you know, writing things down, and he'd be like, "Do you really want to do that, Bobby?" I mean, all right. You second doubt yourself. You're like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Boss man says, you know, he's vibing me over here for trying to choose, some bindings with bases on them. I don't know.
Right. There was a real push in that time in the industry to come up with some funky new thing every year.
Yeah.
Baseless bindings was one of those ones that you know, it looked like it was going to do really well. Then it was gone.
Product
It's
back
back.
then
It's
was
back
really bad.
with the EST thing, and the sliders was another one with Rev with the sliders.
Yeah.
It was like, we're going to do these sliders thing, and then
No one really valued the high back until it was gone.
right, yeah. Remember riding with no backs or cutting
it was
down
like
your backs?
cutting the high backs as much as you could, or cutting the boards. I mean,
Yes.
we used to take plates from at Bear when I actually worked at Bear Mountain for. Now I'm bouncing around my timeline, but
No, that's fine.
I worked at Bear for a year and a half, no, like it was a year, and I was a sanitational technician, code name for janitor. But it was an amazing job because I could like basically snowboard in the morning up until 2:00, and then from
Unreal.
2:00 to 12, I would work, you know, cleaning out the bar tap.
Yep,
You know,
that's awesome. So that's how you became pro at riding.
yeah, because I get to ride every day.
You're riding every day
I
at
get to
Bear.
ride every day for
Yeah.
it. But
Bear is a scene too.
Yeah.
I haven't been there, but I know
it was crazy back in the day. It was like, you know, when they had Outlaw Park, and it was
Yes.
just like, you know, it'd be Jana Mayan and Brian Thien and
Oof.
Travis Wood. And,
Oh.
it was like, I mean, it was the scene back then.
It was the scene.
You know?
Yeah. Was
it's
it
crazy.
Gunny that was building the
Yeah,
park?
Gunny was building the park.
That's where it started. And Perillo, Mike Perillo.
Yeah.
That blew my mind to find out that Perillo was on that side of it, because I've always had him associated with the Terrier art. You know,
Yeah.
the like he's
Yeah,
always been the art guy
Yeah, him and like,
for me.
well, it's fun. Yeah, and it's funny at the time I didn't even know he was like an artist or whatever. He was just like the bossy boss man in the park that was like always vibing everybody out.
Oh wow,
And
really?
I remember,
He seems so opposite
Well,
of
I
that.
cut my board one time, and I
Yeah.
was like, dude, I went over to because, you know, back in the days, like everyone always hung out at the snowboard shop that was at Bear.
Yeah.
So we would go in, and I'd be like, I'd get a new board. I had this, like, I think it was a Barfoot. I took, no, it was a Look Lamar, and I cut it, and I put a plate on it, to, like, and drew around. It was like, this is how I want the shape to be. Hey, can I borrow the like saw?
Yeah.
And he was just vibed me so hard. He's like, "Oh, you're going to hop on that trend, are you?" And it was just like, I don't know, like we're super cool, but it was just like at the time I was just like, and like everyone was doing it. Like the boards were too long for the parks at the time. And
that nose on that Lamar was like
Yeah, it
a
was giant.
third of the board.
yeah, and so you know, it was like, but we would also cut them down to where it was like there was hardly any lift on
Yeah,
it. I
too
mean, it
much.
was like-
Yeah. You'd have to turn it around because the
Yeah.
tail kick was a little steeper, so it was a little higher.
Yeah.
I talked with Bert Lamar about the shape of that board, and he had basically just bought a Tony Hawk, given it to the engineers at Look, and said, "This is the most popular shape in skateboarding.
Yeah.
Let's do something, you know, based on this, or like, hey, this kind of graphic is what I'm thinking, or whatever." And then that board came out, and he went, "I didn't mean like trace it. What the fuck? That's not even gonna work. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell?"
it was a pretty crazy board. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
good. It was just at the time where snowboarding was finding itself, and like the trends and stuff were. I mean,
I
we were all
wanted that
wearing
board.
We were
Yeah.
all wearing giant baggy pants. Like you could,
Humongous.
you could just. I mean, Genkos and like other types of pants like jeans. You would just, you know, so much that you could literally just crouch a little bit, bend your knees just a little bit, and your boots would disappear.
That's it.
So like, and then at the time you didn't have any high backs on, or
Right.
there's probably a good chance that you didn't even have base plates, like
Yeah.
so, or canters, you know, like
Nothing.
things like that.
Nothing. Just flat, standing on the board.
It was in a weird spot at that time, I think. So.
With super soft boots that when you ratchet them down, they're just squishing over the sides.
Yeah, I had back then. I actually started when I finally got a pair of boots. I got a pair of they were Sorel Pipe Dogs, and someone had given me a pointer on them to you need to go and put some ski boot liners in there. Yeah, and I was like, okay. So I bought some old ski boot liners or whatever. I forget where I got them, but. Yeah, I ended up with those were my boots for years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Then and it was so funny because they were white, and no one said anything to my face about them until one day I got a pair of new Burton's boots. Actually Dave Downey, because he was repping and riding pro at the time out there, he totally gave me a pair of pipe dogs, not pipe. What are they called? The Stumpies. They were Stumpies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
sick.
Then,
sick.
I was super hyped on them.
Yeah.
And I didn't, obviously I wasn't walking around bragging about them or anything like that, but everyone kept going Bobby, you got new boots. You got new boots. I'm is there a problem with my boots?
Yeah. I love it.
I know, that's pretty funny.
Dave Downing's one of my favorite guys I've got to meet through the podcast.
He's a good dude.
He's so nice.
Yeah, I used to hound the shit out of him for product because he was the Will Burton made the best boots at the time, and they made the best bindings at the time.
Absolutely.
So you were hey, most of your sponsors for any of us were strictly based board brands were easy to come by, but and clothing too or whatever, but for the most part, it was really hard to get a boot sponsor.
Yeah, Devin and Sluggo. Sluggo was a key rider for Airwalk at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that Jimmy Scott era Airwalk, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he brought Devin to a shoot somewhere and vouched for him, just not to ride for them, but just hey, this kid's with me, don't fuck with him, he's cool.
Yeah.
And Devin wound up being the main dude on
awesome.
Airwalk for...
Yeah, I remember when Devin, one time we were in the Outlaw Park or whatever. I had those big berms. I mean, they were legendary, back then. And I remember Ryan Emmergart came into the I think I was doing something or whatever. I was just chilling, and he just came up and he was like, Bobby, come on, let's go. We're doing it today. And I was like, well, what do we do? What's going on? And he's like, we're going to jump the berms, and we're going to gap it.
Yeah.
And so it's from one, it was they were super deep. But we'd always talked about it, jumping from one of the little lips as he S's around and over the backside and landing down on the backside of one. And, it's sheer wall, almost vert walls. Those were probably 8 feet deep, sheer, almost vert walls for those things. And that was the day. So we were all all right, cool. And I think Gooch was there, Emmergart, Matt Donahue,
nice, and
Devin. And so everyone kind of jumped on whatever. It was a sketchy run in, it's such a quick tranny, such a quick pop to it. And I remember I think Gooch came up. I think Gooch came up really short, and then it didn't get hurt or anything like that. And Donahue, I think maybe made it over, and then I slipped out on mine and ended up doing a backside 180. Just out of pure cat-like ability, I just managed to land on my feet around, and it was so ugly and sketchy, but it was just because it was a heel slide to me, heel quick left turn and then right, so it was all of my heels, and then comes Devin Walsh, and we were we already knew this kid was different, he was this dude and we had never seen in our park before or whatever, and I just remember him going yeah, I think I'm gonna jump it, because he was there and he was gonna jump it too. So he goes and he does this insane, super styly mute grab over it. It wasn't even everyone else it took effort to get over it, and he just does just butter ollie over it and just grabbed mute, boned it all out, landed, and then I remember him going yeah, I think I can spin over it. And we were whoa, what do you mean, So then he comes off and he does next hit, front three, whoom, in the air, just grabbed, super sick, bones it out, and I literally heard him say in the air, go, oh yeah, I got it.
Yes.
And then he just sure enough landed and just stomped it and rode off. We were dude, who is this kid?
That is so sick.
And then
that is so sick.
Then he destroyed the park for a week after or something like that, and then took off back to Canada.
He was probably still on Barfoot at that time, right?
Maybe? Yeah, he was on Barfoot.
Yeah.
And then Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that,
Did he go to Shorty's there afterward, maybe, or something like that? I forget.
Yeah, went barefoot to Never. He did
Yeah.
Never, and then when Never became Option, I think right at that transition, he was on Shorty's.
Yeah.
And Shorty's was made at the Option factory, the Never factory, because those boards were really good.
Yeah.
And
I forgot of even Option.
yeah.
So many snowboard brands, like Awesome.
Oh
was
my
actually
God,
that have,
totally.
like bit the dust.
Well, when
But-
you said Subtle, I was like, oh, I remember. Like it brings back full page ad memories, subtle ads that were not a lot of stuff going on.
And it was weird too. We had I feel like the team was really cool. We had Thien and Jason Bump, myself, and Travis Wood, and I want to say maybe it was Dresser on time. I can't remember, but the graphics on it were, I think Bump did all the graphics, and it was just like an S with some wheat in it. It was like such a I don't know, like high end,
yeah, totally
graphic, kind of in a way at the time when snowboarding was just such a grungy little thing,
Yeah, you'd want to put a cartoon skull on it or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's why those Joyride boards were so popular, and the first generation of rides after, the first year where they put the cartoon graphic series was that's what you wanted to sell to everybody, but also the fucking core guys wanted that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want that Ford with that Sylvester. Like, it's got the flat kicks.
Well,
and
that was the craziest thing.
yeah.
Is like when you think about it now, you're like, oh yeah, well, that wasn't doing you any favors in the POW. But hey, we weren't really riding that. I mean, it was all park. I mean, park was life back then.
Well, I think the pendulum had to swing from. There was a lot to do with powder in the first 20
Rob
years.
Defoe.
Rob Defoe. Yeah,
that was like one of the other dudes. It was like always, Bear local
down at
whatever.
Bear. Yeah, yeah. I've talked with him about doing the show. I'd like to have him on the show for sure.
Dude.
Yeah, yeah. That Bear scene was. I mean, it was represented in the magazines really well.
Dude, it was so sick. I mean, like even just like the act of Jana Mayan. I mean, like a lot of people, especially nowadays, don't even know of Jana Mayan, who like was one of the first girls who just like. I mean, I would ride behind her, and at the time, there wasn't a lot of girls like pushing like the technical jib aspect of what Janet was doing, and like you'd ride behind her, and you're like, hey, who's that guy?
Yeah,
like he's crushing it, and then you'd be like, what? That's a girl, and it sounds a little sexist nowadays, but like at the time, it was like there wasn't a lot of girls, like. So
Tina and Shannon,
Shannon, and Barrett and
Morgan
Megan
Lafont,
and Morgan, and that was kind of it. So and it was such a different scene. It wasn't like those are mostly all, Pacific Northwest, or they were like, Big Mountain, or,
Yeah, Victoria was definitely like, the queen at that time. The most amount of coverage because she's on Burton. Burton was not buying their way into the mags. They were playing the game the best.
Yeah.
They were getting their guys to shoot with staff photographers all the time, submitting 10-to-1 photos compared to everybody else in the industry.
I remember those times.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But I don't know. Like nowadays, it's amazing. I just did that It's Tits thing with
Rad.
Barrett and sat on their little panel, and it was just amazing with Kimura. And like you look around, and you're just like, there's so many amazing women in the sport now. It's like
Jess put a lot of effort in on women's behalf, saying like we're still a little way far behind. Yeah. The Uninvited was. It's hard to believe she's done 3 of those movies, and the industry has completely changed. It feels like from 5 years ago, like because the most interesting stuff right now, Todd Richards said it. I agree with them. Is watching women's progression because you don't know what's going to happen. They're getting that much better every season,
crushing it. It's so nice to see.
Super fun.
Yeah, but anyway, so
K2. Let's dive into K2. What era of K2 is this? Lance Pittman and
I got it right.
And Mark Frank Montoya.
Actually, no, I don't think. I think I was after Mark. I got on right when Blue got the job, and this was 2000, and I want to say it was like 2001 or something like that. I mean, I don't have a timeline in front of me, but like, I think it was around that era. Blue. Subtle just went out of business, and then so I didn't really know what I was going to do at the time. I knew I was in between sponsors. I wasn't making a ton of money at the time, and I was kind of broke. So I was just like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll get a job at this Italian restaurant. It's called Tucci's in Salt Lake City, and like I'll just save up a little bit of cash and then I'll, continue until I find out like what I'm going to do. But Jared Winkler, if you know him, he
I know
he runs
name.
all the park and does, I don't know, he's actually probably a big dog now over at Brighton, but he used to work at Tucci's as a manager there. So he totally got me a job. And it was just funny because I know I worked there for 2 months or something, but I would be like, hey, Jared, just wanted to let you know that I can't make it today. I'm in Colorado. We're shooting because I'm still filming and still trying to do things. But I'm like, the jump's pretty good. So I can't really make it to work today. I'm going to have to be, I'll be in next week. And he's like, all right, cool. And it was always, he was so supportive. It was amazing.
Wow.
He was always just like, sounds good. I'll find somebody to cover it, and
he was never stressed
no. And he probably, maybe it was internally, but I think he knew that I was just obviously I was just kind of there to be honest, I kind of a little bit of it. I kind of liked the idea of getting a job just to be I haven't had a job, I had to interact with people on a customer kind of level. So I thought it was good. I just waiting tables. I thought it was just a good experience. Just I've always kind of just done things in life just based on the experience. And I thought that would be good just to see what the service industry is like.
When I got my first real job out in the world after working at the Boardroom for 12 years as a mailman, one of the things I loved was that I didn't have that bought loyalty to some brand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you can pick anything you want in snowboarding, build your kit from any company, there's nothing better.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
So then I ultimately I got a job. Well, Blue was my roommate at the time, or just after, and he's like, I'm gonna interview for that K2 role. And so he ended up interviewing for that K2 team manager role and got the job. And then I shortly followed after onto the team.
Rad.
And the rest is kind of history on that end. It was me, Travis. He brought up Louis Fountain. I signed Ville, Brian Savard.
Oh, Savard, right. I'm our
so
guy.
I was like, man, I haven't talked to him in a long time. Brian Savard.
Sick. Yeah.
And Chris Ingelsman.
I'm
probably missing a ton of other people.
Right.
Yeah. But it was just it was a cool little crew,
And Pittman. Like I was saying, Pittman was...
he was on the tail end of that K2 thing, I think.
Yeah,
so, yeah, that was K2, the K2 vibes on there.
Did you guys travel as a team, or were you just kind of independents all over the place?
We didn't really travel as a K2 team. There was maybe a couple trips here and there, but for the most part, we were all traveling together anyway because we all, Chris was filming for Standard, I was filming for Standard, Travis was filming for Standard. I think Louis might have filmed for a little bit. And then, shortly after we started doing the robot food stuff. And then we all just kind of went into that zone and then we all just traveled anyway. So it was,
robot food would have been awesome.
Yeah, it was a good little, it was a good era.
Yeah, because robot food kind of got in there when things were so big that it was almost not fun to watch anymore. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to show up at an event where you're like, all right, so we're all going to risk our life? Everybody. Yeah. Everyone's going to risk their life today.
When we started robot food, it was more of just based around we were just frustrated with the lack of control that we had over the creativity of one, not so much of our snowboarding, but the way our snowboarding was portrayed.
Yeah.
And that's via music or the way the edits ran or whatever. And, and I think for the time, Standard did a great, they were amazing. They always have a place in history. Their films were great.
Yes.
But they were always pretty cookie cutter in a way of how they approached it. TB4 is the same approach as TB8, so it was just kind of the same kind of formula, and we were just tired of it. So I remember we were in Hemsett all together. It was like Jess Gibson, who was filming for the time for Standard, and then it was UC and Johnny Makinen, myself, Travis, and I think Ingelsman was there maybe, and then and I'm probably missing some other people. I think Pierre Whitberg or something like that because we were in Himms at all. We just had this meeting of the minds kind of thing, hey, we're going to revolt basically.
Wow.
And we talked about building, hey, we should do our own thing. And it was more based around just, creative freedom of being able to control the music, control just every aspect of it. And
the filler, the vibe, the way the parts are laid.
And we wanted to have fun.
Out.
We didn't want to like hotbox the editing room. We just wanted to like do as much as like just create a lot of fun things and let our personality shine a little more. And that's kind of how it spun. So we all went back, and then we, kudos to Gibson and to Jess Gibson and Pierre Wickberg they really took charge of like kind of owning the structure of it. I mean, as snowboarders, we're all just kind of all over the place. And Benedict, sorry, that's one I missed too.
Yeah.
And Benedict did a great, we all kind of like, it was new, it was fresh, it was something we all were invested in, and it was ours. Like, so that was what changed. Like with Standard or Mag Dog or whatever, and you were filming with those guys, it didn't really feel, it never felt like it was your own. You were just kind of building your part,
Right.
This was like,
and
more,
the pressure, I can imagine the pressure just being insane.
Yeah, and so like you ran out, a lot of times you get on trips, people you maybe don't gel with or whatever. Yeah. But with us, it was like cool because we got to pick, like, we want this person. Like, we all love this guy. Let's get this guy. Well, and it was funny because originally I remember it being really tough sell on a lot of the sponsors at the time, like a lot of our rider sponsors, because everyone was like, "What? It was so just breaking the mold."
Yeah.
And no one wanted to invest in it. There's only a couple like companies that were like, "Oh, this sounds awesome. I'm in."
Wow.
For $50,000 or whatever the hell it was back then to invest in like sponsorship.
Hell yeah.
Stuff.
Right.
And so I remember Burton was very apprehensive about it, and the support for UC and everyone, and yeah, I mean, but we finally, they finally came around, and that was like one of the big sponsors we had locked in. Like, I think once UC was in, it was like, okay, because he was such a like legend even at the time.
Yeah, he was larger than life.
Oh, I mean, he's so incredibly good. And then, and so I don't know. It was just like one of those things. Where, like, finally, we got all the sponsors to put some trust in us, and and then the rest kind of.
The proof is in the pudding. Like, it was a game changer.
Well, it was cool
across the industry.
There's so many moments. Like, example, like, myself and Travis Parkin and Louis Fountain are bored one day, and we're like, "What do you want to do today?" And one of us is like, "Let's go to Home Depot and build a robot." It's robot food, right?
Yeah.
So we just went out and like literally with the shopping cart down the aisle going, this looks like it'll fit make an arm. This looks like a, like a head part. This is like, so we just bought a bunch of sheet metal and everything else that was silver and some silver spray paint and actually made this robot suit. And who knew it was going to be so iconic for like, that project.
It was as much of a game changer in the industry then as Travis's That's It, That's All would be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there was, because it wasn't just the riding, it was the filming. The filming was also very, it wasn't the long shot follow of Standard. The way it was, the way it was edited, it was so easy to watch. And that's the thing. Robot Food came out and it was like, it's over. Let's watch it again. Let's go riding tonight. Let's get a crew.
I think that's one of the biggest compliments is people would watch it to get pumped up to go snowboarding.
100%.
And so I can remember, look back and like Hard, Hungry, and Homeless. Like, I'd watch that before I go snowboarding. 100%. Like, how do I get fired up? And people are watching something you do to get fired up to go snowboarding. It feels pretty good. Success.
Yeah. With the music part of the early movies, like, you could put on the soundtrack from, or like some NoFX song from, Roadkill or whatever, right? Yeah. And then it felt like you were going to do what they were doing in the movies. Then you'd go hit side hits and do your silly stuff. But
do everything half as high
or quarter. Yeah.
Quarter is that.
Being a part of Robot Food, like, man, what a history.
Like, man, it was. The things I'm most proud of, I guess, in a way, is like probably, Robot Food was definitely having the ability to help influence that, and
cool.
And I think that's just a real cool opportunity. And then also too, I mean, like the memories from traveling with all those guys. It's like, sure, you travel with people for like, I mean, we only did it for 3 years. It's crazy when you think about it. Like,
it's nuts.
Literally, it's 3 years.
Yeah.
And so traveling with all those guys for 3 years and just being just so united in one common goal, and it's different than being like, oh yeah, you got thrown in with a crew and your crew's changing up all the time. And like, and through thick and thin, we all had each other's backs, and we're like, even there was like little little I want to say like factions, so to say, like, oh, the Euros are stayed together, and like Travis and myself and like a couple of guys stayed together or whatever. But for the most part, we all rode together, and we all like, it was just, I don't know, it was just real cool opportunity to like to do something together. And like I think that's where the motivation was, well, at least it was a big part of it, is the fact that like you really felt united. Like, and if you didn't have the part right, if you were like you weren't living up to your end, so you like tried harder because like I don't want to fail like and let Travis and Benedict down and like the other robots down. Like I don't. So you really tried for the most part, and then it was cool because everyone had their own ability. Everyone, like Benedict had a huge influence on the art, and a lot of the poster graphics, and designed all of the like the packaging and everything. And
I remember thinking at the time that he was the best snowboarder in the world.
Yeah,
like seeing his part. I remember seeing the first one it was Lame, right? It was Lame and then After Lame?
It was After Bang?
After Bang.
After Bang and then Lame and then After Lame.
So I remember After Bang, his part being like, I've never heard of this guy. Who the hell is this guy? He's the best.
Yeah.
And then Lame, same deal. And being like, he kind of came out of nowhere to me.
Yeah, he's was so talented. I mean,
unbelievably talented.
I think he was he on Solomon at the time? I think he was on Solomon.
Yeah,
but all those Euro dudes were like exceptionally good. Like they're used to. I mean, it was a different, like, I don't know, it's just a different level of snowboarding. When you grow up and it's ingrained in the culture of your DNA, like basically like all the European, Scandinavian riders, like they grow up snowboarding as a family. They go to the mountains as a family. Like it's amazing. They have a holiday, a month-long holiday for like ski vacation. Like
I love it.
You're like, wow, or something like that. But
so, how long do you do at K2? Like 4 or 5 years?
I think I was 5 years at K2, and then it was a great time. Like I knew the end was nigh.
What were the harbingers of the end?
I just was starting to like kind of get disengaged.
You've been doing it for a long time.
Been doing it a long time, and then also, it's like, I just started to lose interest in a lot of like the passion of it. I still loved it. Loved it, every bit of it, but I still was like kind of like, well, I'm, like I think I was 33 years old at the time or something like that. And I was like, man, I got to like think of what's next. And then when you start thinking of what's next, it just starts eating at you. Like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And then I just started kind of, it was just kind of dwelling on it a little bit and like just trying to make sure that I was going to set myself up right for what was next. And then I started writing before K2 went out. I started writing for, because I think they dropped clothing at the time, and then so I started writing for Mission 6 for outerwear for a minute, and they were cool. And he kind of like knew the direction I was going in my life, and he was just like, "Hey, why don't you be like our team manager / writer, like the team captain kind of way?" And then, which means team captain means you're going to transition into team writer, team manager at some point.
Yeah.
But like, why don't you, you can do this, and then we, maybe we can transition you into marketing or whatever. And I was like, all right, well, yeah, I still want to snowboard. I don't want to totally walk away from it, but yeah, I'd love to like learn some other skills in life or whatever. And so he's like, yeah, can you put together like a plan? What you would do for marketing for like, let's just say it's like $70,000. And I was like, $70,000. Oh my God, that's so much money.
Yeah.
$70,000. So a whole year, $70,000. Wow. Okay. Let me add this up. All right. So every Transworld ad, okay, that's 5,000, and then the team riders. Okay. And then there's promo product and next thing you know, I'm like, what, wait a minute. I'm like $70,000 over 70,000. Like what? Like this isn't possible. I'm like, what? And so it was like a real quick lesson in like the business aspect of it is like, it costs money.
So much money.
And the battle that I would soon have to have throughout my whole life of managing a budget and trying to make it all work.
Unreal. That Mission 6 clothing was so awesome.
Well, they were ahead of the time. They had that they had stretchy material.
Yeah,
and
thin, like cool feeling material.
Yeah, I think it was the first company to come out with like stretchy outerwear.
It was epic.
Yeah, it was cool. Like fit.
The fit, the
was
style.
The fit was felt like it was a little off, but like the
little big,
the
maybe?
design. It was just like short arms, kind of like short arms, and like I don't know. There were some things that I was kind of annoyed with it, but I thought they were on the forefront of something.
They were.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely were. Who were the guys on the team?
Dude, I don't even remember. It was kind of a quick stint.
So what was the deal with the owner? I've seemed to remember feeling like it was one of those ones where like Rome or something, where it was like someone high up at Burton was like leaving Burton to start.
I don't know. I know the owner came from somewhere, but I think that like they were hurting. I think that they were like at the time they had like hit their peak and they were kind of coming down.
Oh, okay.
It was like one of those things where they didn't have a lot of investing dollars.
They had a pretty short stint, but when they were doing it, that I instantly understood what they were doing.
I'm spacing on his name, but I haven't seen him forever. I want to say it was like Mike or something, but he was awesome. He was always like treated me with a ton of respect, and like he was a good dude.
And that transitions you into a team manager type.
Well,
role.
I ended up actually like shortly after that, K2 ended up like not re-signing my contract.
Was there a new TM or
yeah.
Because that usually happens, right?
Yeah. Ryan Runkey, my new team manager. Shout out for not resigning my contract. But at the end of the day, I wasn't too bummed. Like I literally like I was just in the mindset of like, okay, and I knew it was coming. Like I just mentally, I'm transitioning. I know it, and it's fine. Like, and I remember like the phone call that day. I literally talked to Ryan, and I was like, okay, cool. And I could have still like tried to milk it and still kind of like, got another sponsor, and then it would just been this big, long, like kind of like, I just didn't want to go through it again. And then and I loved snowboarding, but I didn't want to be like, I just didn't want to, I just felt it was time. Yeah. And so I basically said, all right, cool. I hung up the phone and I like literally, I shed a tear. Like I literally thought back at this is a true story, totally. I shut off the phone and I said, that's it. That's the end of my snowboarding career. And I shed a tear. I literally had to wipe my eyes, and I was like, man, I'm happy. I'm happy with it. And I just kind of like that point, I kind of took like, I don't know, solace in the fact that I like my career and everything, and just kind of walked away from it kind of on my terms, instead of like trying to like, oh, I tried and I couldn't make it again. So I felt like I walked away from it on my terms, and I was happy with my career. And then I decided to just go off and like, and decided to go dive in Long Island, and just did this high dive show thing. And I got a phone call from Nike at the time, and they were like, it's actually Nemo looking for someone to work at Nike. And that was like, basically they were looking for someone who could work grassroots marketing in Southern California, could cruise around.
Do you need to get that?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Could cruise around and give out shoes and stickers and stow kids out in a van, like this Nike van. And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
So I basically packed all my things. I left. I came out to Southern California, and for 2 months, all I did was cruise around all of Southern California every single day and go to skate parks. And for their, like, Nike put together this new, this little action sports brand called Nike 6.0 at the time.
6.0, sick.
And at the same time, they were doing Nike SB.
Right, it was something different. What was the difference between SB and 6.0?
Well, SB was, I think you're thinking of ACG, but SB was their whole skateboarding thing, and they were doing that 100% right. It was like, they were crushing it. It was like, but then they had ACG, but they kind of killed ACG. They were kind of like, it was on the back end. And so 6.0 was supposed to replace it. It was going to be this new, like, all action sports brand. And I was kind of like, I don't really like the direction here, but I'm going to give it a whirl. And I mean, I'm getting paid to go skateboard, and I'm getting, maybe there's an opportunity down the line for something. And sure enough, a couple years later, I ended up like bringing me on for 2 years as a contract, like an independent contractor, and I drove the van around all over the place to events in this crazy 6-wheeled Seagull van, car that they built. That was an AMC Eagle, 2 of them combined. was a dually. Like,
Oh,
it was insane.
wow.
They had so much cash and so much like resources to do things that it was just like fun to work for them. Like, it was like anything you could dream of, you could get it funded, and it was just amazing. And then I ended up. I remember going one day. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to SIA, and they're like, hey, like you should go to SIA with this guy and this guy John Martin who worked for SB at the time, and we went to SIA to kind of take our feelers out about just only a snowboarding program or like a product. And when we came back, we like kind of gave them a little heads up, like Nike, the hires up there, that. Yeah, I mean, like it would be great to do it like a Nike snowboarding, and yeah, I don't know. They signed on for it. And
had they done one at that point, or is this the absolute?
No,
first
this was the first one. They had done like ACG and stuff, and
what was ACG?
ACG was their like spin on like an outerwear, kind of outerwear, and then it was kind of an outdoorsy.
Yeah, I think I had
outerwear.
one of their big jackets. It was like Gore-Tex and like pits.
Well, I remember being in like this crazy meeting one time, and they were like, hey, ACG makes $130 million a year or something like that, or whatever. And I think it was like dropping down, and it was like this projected at 70 now, and then so we're just gonna kill it, and then we'll just bring in Nike 6.0. And I was just like the whole time I'm like, I don't have a business degree, but I'm like, that's $70 million.
yeah, you're gonna just turn off the faucet for $70 million of revenue. Yeah,
they just think in bigger terms there. It's like that's not enough for them to like, it's too many problems.
It didn't work with the snowboard industry because it was like the on again, off again of it made it more difficult each time you started up. It felt like.
Yeah, they kept trying to do it under different like monikers or whatever, and just kind
to
of
a consumer, it was like, hey, Nike's making boots again. I'm like, again, like why they just kill? Didn't they just have to pay out contracts to people and they didn't have boots for them? Like, what the fuck? What are these guys doing? It seemed crazy to someone to whom which $70 million is 10 lifetimes of money for me.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of overhead and I'm sure there's a lot of things on a spreadsheet we're not privy to see, but
of course. Also, if you're the biggest in one category, it's hard to go in and not be the biggest.
Well, dude, they can like make $1 billion on socks so they don't even have to market.
Right.
So like, why? What's this line item? Snowboarders cost so much money to be in. Like, we got to pay all these athletes.
And where are we in the industry? Are we the number one guy? Are we in the best shops? Nah, you know what? We're not doing that great. Or we're only going to do 70 billion or whatever. You're like, or 70 million.
But anyway, long story short,
let's talk about SB because being there would have been so rad.
It was cool, man. It was like they were, SB was SB was like the cool kids. Like they were the cool kids on the block. They were the coolest kids on campus, like by far. And so they were doing everything right. Like their dunk program, and they just represented skateboarding really well and authentically, and how like I felt like that's how Nike should represent snowboarding. So ultimately, they had decided, let's do a Nike snowboarding pattern. It basically what we're doing off of at Nike SB,
rad,
Nike skateboarding, and so that was great times, and it was like awesome. We got, I got to handpick the team, and we didn't go out immediately and get like the biggest names. Like that was what everybody thought we were gonna do. Like at the time, like, oh, it's Nike. They're gonna go out and they're gonna get Shaun White. Like that was the and at that time, obviously he was the biggest name in snowboarding.
Yeah. But
no, we're like, we're
Danny Cass is pretty close.
Well, Danny was after. Danny came late after. So it was like, first off, we got Justin Benny.
Nice.
And then we got Laura Haydar.
Nice.
And then we got like Austin Smith, and like, we got all these like, really like, we really focused and honed in on younger, cool, like people who were Nike, who would be fans of Nike. So that was kind of like our goal. And then Danny came along. The opportunity for Danny really kind of like obviously took it to the next level. And Danny was, still one of the biggest names in snowboarding at that time. So like for him to shift over to us, to Nike at the time was pretty big. It was pretty huge. But yeah, I think my biggest thing on that is like, I mean, I could talk for days about that, but like for the most part, it was like, we just did it right. Like that was like what we tried to do is just do. And what, you know, every decision that I made in my position over there was like based around like how can Nike help snowboarding? And that's what I tried to like really hone in on, in a sense of like, I would always judge it off of like, is it right for snowboarding? Will this help move snowboarding forward? Or, you know, but there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen over there.
Hell yeah,
and once Nike Snowboarding and Nike 6.0 got merged together, and then we had multiple brand managers and multiple like team managers that like everyone took different positions, and like it kind of ended up losing a little bit of its focus, which turned it very heavily into the contest side of things, which was not really the direction I thought. Maybe we should have had a presence in the contest side of it, but I didn't think it needed to be as heavy on that. You know, we had Nicholas Mueller, we had Gigi Ruff, we had Danny Cass, you know, like we had Annie Boulanger, we had like all these people who were just like at the top of their game, Scott, you know, and then we also had like a ton of contest kids that were like, you know, every one of those guys cost money.
Yes.
So in the end of the day, and no offense to like them, I think it's awesome that
they're worth the money,
and I'm great to like support them, like whatever. But like, we didn't need to have 30 riders on our team. We just needed like 6.
Yeah.
You know, that was
kind
of it. Like I didn't need 30 of them. And so ultimately, like we were spending so much money in sports marketing that I think that was like one of the big reasons for its downfall as well.
Well, that kind of is cool when you look at it from the point of view, a neutral observer point of view of snowboarding. Like what you were saying, like what can Nike do for snowboarding? Well, first of all, they've got resources.
Yeah.
So they can put some of these professional athletes at a level of income that is on par with professional athletes, right? And like superstars. That doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I mean, we flew all over the world first class. It was awesome.
Every Nike athlete I've talked to,
yeah,
like Spencer O'Brien was just like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Annie was like, she's like, we would go to like master class seminars. Like Nike would bring us to an event and there would be some insanely intelligent person there talking about sports marketing to help us with our imaging, you know? It just sounded like it was a completely different thing from everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, like when we came out with the Zoom Force 1, like before we even came out with it, we were like to test the product. We were going to shoot it in Russia with Nemo and Trevor Graves and everybody. We were going to get one of those hyperbolic planes and with, you know, owned by the Russian military or whatever. So we flew to Moscow to like we all flew first class to Moscow or whatever to go there and float around in these like, you know, with having the boot float in the air and take photos of it and be like, yeah, that's how we're going to advertise the Zoom Force 1. Like this is going to be it. And
you couldn't just throw it up in the air and take a picture?
No, like it had to be in a plane. Ultimately, that didn't happen because we like there was a commercial shoot, for a car company or something that needed an extra day, and we had such a tight schedule that
So you guys flew to Moscow first class and then flew back to wherever you were.
Yeah, flew there and flew. Then we flew straight to Switzerland to go test the boots on the snow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the athletes that rode those boots, you know, Spencer O'Brien when the program was closing, she said she called and said, I need every size 9 of her boot style that you've got there. I still have budget. Like, send me all that. Yeah.
The level of product was like exceptional. Like it was like they elevated the game in product and elevated like pretty much everything about the game. The way athletes were treated, the way they got paid, the like the perception of a snowboarder, you know, like as an, you know, I love it or hate the word, but as an athlete, you know, or, you know, an influencer,
right?
You know, they properly treated them well.
That's sick.
You know, as well as we could.
How about you? Did you make good money while you were there? You feel like
I mean, I made okay money. It wasn't like, I mean, I didn't make $1 million or something, but you know, at the time I was traveling the world with dudes and like with the team and, you know, kind of like, still living the lifestyle, but just not with any of the like stress of having to kill myself off of like this 120-foot jump that's like solid ice that I don't want to hit anymore. You know, I don't have to.
Yeah, amazing. So
I just had to tell somebody else to do it. You know?
Oh God, how hard is that?
Oh, I don't ever. I always, hey man, it's up to the rider. It always is up to the rider.
Yep.
I'm not into telling people what they have to do when it's their trick or, you know, their decision. So it should never be a team manager telling a snowboarder what he needs to do as far as if a trick is concerned. Yeah. Like a feature or whatever.
And also it's just bad form. Like I remember Jason Ford talking about how he felt at Burton after the TM came in and berated Brushy in front of him, said like, you know, one more third place like that.
Yeah.
Brush, you might not be on the team anymore. And Jason Ford was like, they would can Brushy? He's the best in the world. Like, who would come in and say that? What? How is that going to motivate a guy, first of all? Second of all, it just feels bad for everybody in the room.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things like, you know, there's obligations you have as a employee of, because that's what you are. Like if you're a sponsored rider, at the end of the day, you are an employee. You're getting paid. You're being compensated to ride and represent that company. So there are certain things that you've got to do. And you know, every job sucks.
Yes.
Every job has its benefits, and then it's, you know, and the part about it that sucks.
Right.
And as awesome as snowboarding is, there's stuff that sucks. Yeah, you got to go and sit for 8 hours and sign autographs at a shop.
Yep.
That part kind of sucks, but hey, that's your job. Like, you know, so, or hitting, you know, you're going out and filming some stuff, and, you know, there's a lot of money that goes into people traveling all over the world getting shots, you know, you gotta do it. But but it's not your place as a team manager or a brand manager or whatever to tell somebody that they have to hit an icy kicker and you know, and flat light or whatever it is.
Yeah, your part's missing a 7 or something. Like get out there and or that 7 you did's too small or whatever it is. Yeah. No, the micromanaging thing for sure. Well, I think the hardest part to an outsider looking in would be when you got to cut somebody, or when when there's a budget cut, you got to cut everybody's pay or whatever the hell, where you've got to go in and just be like.
That's the worst part, is like when you have to cut people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they think it's you, and they're like, oh, you know, it's personally.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, I'm like looking at the line items the same. My boss is looking at line items, and he's saying, you got to shave off money. And I can't shave off money from like other aspects of the job. I have fought like to a point where I've almost been let go for riders, but it's on the back end. Like people don't see it, you know, and it sucks to be in that position. But I mean, that's every job in life. You're going to be presented at a point, if you're a manager or you work at a company, where you're going to have to make decisions like that, and it's not fun.
Did you move to Wy'East Camp directly from Nike?
No, I went to DC. As soon as Nike killed their snowboarding program, I moved over to, I probably stayed along for about 6 months until I was like, I just don't see myself here with like, I don't have any ambition to go into running or like desire to go to football or something like that. Like it's not in my culture.
There's nothing left for me here.
Yeah. And so, I just looked at it as a great learning experience. I mean, 10 years at Nike, I learned a lot. I didn't go to college. I mean, like Nike was my college. Like I learned a shitload of stuff there about marketing, about presentation, about like managing budgets and like planning your year out. There's so much stuff that I learned that was life lessons, you know? And at that time I was just like, I just don't want to, I still want to dedicate myself to snowboarding. And so Dave Appel called me up from DC, and he's like, hey, I know they just killed that program over there. Is there any interest you'd want to come over to DC? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm totally interested.
What's that move from Oregon to
Southern California?
Southern California, yeah.
And I ended up interviewed with Jeff Taylor, who was worked at DC as brand manager there, and dude's an old pro skateboarder and like
Rad.
awesome guy. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, my boss is going to be an old pro skateboarder. I'm like, this is awesome. So like, I ended up taking the job and working with the team, and everyone over there was great. I worked, we basically, we had free reign for like similar situation kind of at Nike. I mean, not with the budgets, but obviously
Right.
no one has that money, and we didn't have a ton of money, but like we had freedom, and like we weren't under the microscope, and we could do the cool things in snowboarding, like things that we thought were like would move the needle from a cool factor, or just things that we were interested in.
Yeah.
And that's what's compelling to me. Like that's kind of, I look back and I'm like, oh man, those are great times. Like as soon as we got there, then same with everything. Like eventually, like snowboarding, bigger companies, this is how it works. Like you're under the radar until you're not. And when you're not under the radar, you're either failing so bad that you're on the radar because they're going to cut your program. Right. Or number two, you're doing such a good job that they're looking at growth and they're like, well, look what snowboarding's doing. And so then they're like, hey, we need to push growth, which ultimately kills your brand in a sense of like, then they push so hard that they want triple digit growth. Like, yeah. And then they ultimately, you're forced to make decisions that aren't what's right for snowboarding. And that's where that's where the failure starts to seep in.
Were you way after Mountain Lab, or were you
after Mountain Lab?
Yeah. Because that's when DC got on my radar as somewhere that looked like they really got it, like a fun. And then I talked to Devin about it. He's like, Mountain Lab, I hated going there, man.
Well, early DC was awesome. And like, that's kind of like, we were coming off of, the hangover of that, and, Quicksilver had bought it.
See, I didn't even know.
Yeah. So Quicksilver owns no longer. Now they've created this conglomerate corporation called Boardriders, and they own Element and DC and Quicksilver and Roxy, and there's a bunch of other brands in there.
That's big.
I'm missing, but it's like, it then becomes like you're a category and you are a line item or whatever. And and ultimately, same thing. Like they just push, want all this crazy growth, and and I just felt that I was tired of it.
The pressure's a lot.
And I was on a trip with Japan with the DC team, actually. Sick. Which is awesome. But by the way, the DC team, like our team riders, they were fucking awesome. Like the team riders, the people I worked with, Dave Appel, Rob, and Rob doing all the outerwear, and it was just a great team. Like sales force, like everybody was just awesome, good dudes, and it was just like refreshing to go over to there and see people who were truly focused on the culture of snowboarding and the culture of skateboarding over there. So it was great. But after 5 years over there, it was just like one of those things where I'm like, it started to shift in that direction of like triple growth. When are we getting into skiing? It was like, not.
That's impossible.
Oh yeah, that was like
really?
a total topic. And the person is no longer there anymore that, suggesting that. Yeah. But it's just one of those things where it's just like, it just was constant. And I don't know, I just got kind of tired of fighting.
And
I just needed a break.
You've been tight with Trevor forever, right?
Yeah.
Trevor Graves.
Yeah.
And when you sign on here, I can imagine a conversation where there's like spitballing about like what this could become.
Well, yeah. I mean, I did my due diligence. I talked to a lot of people. Just to see what the perception would be of coming to work for a small camp, in people's eyes, whatever. But for me, it was just like I just wanted to take a break from that corporate life of like fighting for snowboarding there, and to just actually come to a smaller company and see what I could do for snowboarding and with like-minded individuals. And camp had such a big influence on me and everybody in the industry that I've known. And so, it was kind of like, and I wanted to get back to Pacific Northwest. I love Portland. Yeah. And I don't know, it was just like a no-brainer. Like after talking to Kevin English about the job, and like he, I was in Japan, and I was like on a filming trip, and I'm just like getting these emails or phone calls from him, and I'm like, I think I might, here's my resume, I'll try it out. And ultimately, I took the job, and the rest is history, I guess, in a way. I no qualms. I look back and I'm like, man, like, I think it was the right call. yeah, I'm just happy like with camps. Like for camp, it's like one of those things. Like everybody's been to camp. If you listen to the Bomb Hole or any other podcast, anyone who talks about snowboarding talks about like who's successful or has a role in snowboarding talks about camp.
Yeah.
And so like I look at that and I'm like, man, like the opportunity to still be involved in camp and to still like shape the kids of the future.
Yeah.
It's like a huge, it's like, how do I pass that up?
If you're running it through the filter you've been using as like, what's the best good I can do for snowboarding? It's hardly anywhere. There's nowhere else in the industry that has this big an effect on so many people. Because you have each group of campers comes through, and these are going to be your next competitive kids. These are going to be your next kids in the industry. Like people that have taken to this thing that got the bug that we got.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, I'm going to snowboard. Their parents have recognized, you know what, maybe there's an opportunity here. We should send our kids to camp or to the academy or whatever. Like it selects for that kind of authenticity that you're talking about.
Well, I grew up in Southern California in the IE, like the 909 Fontana, California. And I would, if it wasn't for snowboarding, I don't know what I'd be doing. I don't, like, it wasn't like I was going to be a pro skateboarder or anything. Like,
right.
If I hadn't discovered snowboarding, I would probably be a pretty shitty dirtbag. Like, in Fontana still. I maybe not even have made it out. Who knows? Like,
yeah.
I probably have face tattoos or something. And I'm like,
I love it, dude.
But yeah, I don't know. Not to say anybody who's got face tattoos is a dirtbag. I'm just saying I probably would be in a different spot.
No, Bozung is the opposite.
I'm just have a,
I want to have him on the show. He's
such a wild dude.
Wild motherfucker. Yeah.
Dude,
yeah. Did you ever team manage him? Did you ever have to?
No, I never team managed him. So I ran into him quite a bit when we were living in Salt Lake. At one point, like Salt Lake was, obviously the hub for
just
a minute.
Everything.
Yeah, everything just kind of bounced around. Like
yes.
Southern California, and then I went to Salt Lake, and then I feel like, maybe it was like Southern California, Denver. Well, not Denver, but what was that? Like Breckenridge area? Like at that time, sure. I think it was like Breck and Bear.
Yeah.
Like kind of competed against each other. And then we all like ultimately moved to Utah to go ride soft
There was
snow.
like a Whistler scene for a while
Whistler,
there too. Like Tahoe, obviously.
Well, the Whistler was like, I mean, I don't even include it because it was such a like magical, mythical place out in up north that you're like, there's no way we'll ever get to go there.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, you just stay down here in the south.
Totally. There's so much love in snowboarding and the different crews. That's for me learning the history of snowboarding through interviewing people, past and present. I just love connecting it all and seeing. Oh, okay, yeah. Colorado was a central place that people from East Coast, West Coast scenes could, and even Canada could come down and compete. And the way that media works, like me reaching out to you, being like, "Hey, we got to do the Vans Week because everybody's in the same place at the same time."
Yeah,
like it's still the same. Those same things are still going on, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, I just got two days of a break, and it all just. A break that it never stopped here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I took 2 days off, but like I literally just transitioned into another session where all of the Solomon guys will be here destroying this place.
Yes.
So it'll be like...
And it was Capita before, and Vans was here.
And it's just like it doesn't stop.
Yes.
All summer. And especially too, this has been such a great snow year.
Yeah. Incredible.
I don't know. It's just nice to be in the the hub of summer snowboarding.
The signature series camps would focus around a person. That's a lot of pressure.
Well, I think the biggest thing is like I kind of changed those from focusing on just individual riders to like the brand, solely because I wanted the individual rider to have more power from the brand and from us to promote them. Like,
yes.
Whereas before, it was a little loose. Like you'd have a signature session athlete, whatever, and then it's like, are there sponsors involved? Like,
right.
Are they gonna support him?
Right.
Like, and so I felt like if you have the actual brand come out as a signature session, then we can all talk about the rider, and we can talk about the riders and their brand, and like, so it's all like smarter. A holistic attack kind of in a way.
Right. And then you can have the authenticity of the brand come out, right? To have Steve Van Doren here making waffles. I don't know if he was making them for the campers or for the
campers are giving out ice cream and like all kinds of stuff. It's like, and the brand has an opportunity to come out here and it's their opportunity.
Yes.
However they want to engage in it,
right?
It's up to them. So if they want to come out and just kill it when bring an events team or whatever, then cool. If you don't want to do that, you just want to come out and have a low key. It's up to you. It's
Send your team riders and just say, go represent us.
As long as everybody has a lot of fun and, the kids are happy. And
I recognized that, like, what it was to be a camper. Like, as we were staying here, watching kids looking up to the pros or even looking up to other campers for that signaling of, like, how do we identify ourselves as a group? Like, you wear your hat backwards? What kind of shoes you wearing? Are they tied?
Yeah.
Are they, you know what I mean? Oh, nobody's wearing socks pulled up. Okay, I'm going no socks or whatever. And then you bring that back to your scene because you're the kid that was lucky enough to go to camp.
Yeah, you're heavily influenced about your peers and the pros here. Like, that's the deal. Is like, you have people here who maybe they just got sponsored. Like, they're new to the team or whatever, and they haven't quite made a name in snowboarding yet, and or whatever sport they're into, and they haven't made a name, but they can make one here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, you can become,
hell yeah.
You have the opportunity to become that kid's favorite, like, snowboarder, skateboarder,
100%.
skier, mountain biker, skate, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you have that opportunity. You just have to seize it.
Chad Otterstrom and Blaze Rosenthal.
Yeah.
Chad was bummed when he was a camper. Oh, we got Blaze. We didn't get, whoever it was.
Yeah.
Tim Windell or Kevin Delaney, Blaze, and a lifelong friendship.
Yeah, and it's no coincidence that, like, a lot of these people who have, like, some of the most easygoing, outgoing personalities are some of the most favorite like pros around here.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're approachable. They take the time to engage with their with the kids. And
Omar Hassan was just here, mind blown.
Yeah, and
that guy. Holy shit.
If they're if you come to camp and you're just too cool for school, then you're totally wasting your opportunity to create fans for life. So
that's sick. Thank you for your time. I know that it's precious, and thanks for the opportunity to come to camp. Thank Trevor for us. The setup here is just unbelievable. And if we get an invitation back next year, we'll come on the Sunday before Monday, Tuesday,
when
Wednesday.
Fired up, ready to go.
Yeah, when people are not burned out on... I mean, I have a sunburn on the top of my head that I can't even describe. Like, it's insane. The sun up there is incredible.
Yeah.
But then the afternoons, you're just dead to the world.
Well, it's camp. You give it all. Imagine being 14 years old here and running around like...
It's perfect.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I went to sixth grade camp, and I think it was for sixth grade, and it was like, I don't know. I think the most coolest thing I did was, I think I whittled like a car or something. I don't know what it was. I mean, and it still was such a memorable experience.
Totally.
So I can't imagine what these kids go through, the opportunity they have.
It's incredible. Yeah, and the one thing that I have noticed, there's no phones. None of the kids are on their phone. No. Nobody's sitting in a corner playing video games. They're engaged. They're skating. They're snowboarding. Especially
day one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty awesome.
Right on. All right, Bobby. Thank you very much. Sick.
Awesome.
FNRad shout-outs this week to Bobby Meeks, Trevor Graves, Steve Van Doren, and the entire camp crew and Van's crew that were at Hood this summer when we visited. It was great to meet listener Todd Dinsmore and his wife Steph this week. Thanks for reaching out, Todd. Listeners, if you're going to be in Vancouver during snowboard season, be sure to hit me up and I'll try to go ride with you. It's too fun. Be sure to come back next week for another episode of FNRad Snowboarding presented by Vans and brought to you by SIA Productions.